All right, let's focus on the plight of young South Africans now. A social justice activist says as the new year begins, millions of young people around the country will be going out in numbers looking for opportunities. Those who've just received their matric results will be standing in long queues trying to secure places at universities and colleges. Zama Mthunzi has an opinion piece that articulates that while seeking improved livelihoods, millions of young people find themselves closed out of opportunities. A social justice activist and a mathematical graduate from University of the Witwatersrand, Zama Mthunzi, joins me in studio. So Zama, I mean, part of the conversation is always about South Africa has a youth bulge in as far as its population is concerned. That could be an opportunity or a threat depending on how the society responds to the needs of these young people. And the consensus is that as a country we've not taken advantage of that youth dividend, and you agree?
Yes, Thulasizwe, we have 8 million now of young people who are neither in education nor in employment or any form of training or organization. These young people are out there looking for these opportunities, knocking on doors. And what has happened then is that we have people saying they're not trying enough. We have people saying that this is a lost generation, but that's not the case. We're not fighting against the poverty of ambition or aspirations from young people. We're fighting against the poverty of opportunity here. Yeah,
so this is, in other words, no country for young people.
Basically, I mean, South Africa has 40% of young people. You know, that's 20 million of the people. And what we see in our society is that young people are excluded in almost every sector of society. You have a parliament that has an average age of 66 years old. You know, you have a South African farmer's age is around 6 years old.
So government will respond by saying that we are trying. I mean, the Youth Employment Service initiative by President Cyril Ramaphosa occasionally gives updates on what it's been doing, but there's a national youth policy. But you are not impressed with that. Let's have a look at what you've written about those initiatives. Some legislative and policy instruments, such as the youth policy and YES, yes, brought about resounding hope, yet they have not implemented many of their intended resolutions. You insist that the year 2020 should be the year where we take action in tackling this crisis. What's the danger of not being able to follow through on these policies?
Well, the problem, the youth policy has been there for 10 years now. It's about to go for amendment for the next 5 years, and we're hoping government is going to invite young people to contribute to the youth policy. What we have seen with the YES program, and young people who've been part of it will tell you, is that the YES program takes very few young people, takes them into internships for 12 months, then doesn't guarantee them a job. So most of them just jump back to unemployment.
Yeah, and you've also been highlighting the impact. For instance, let's take a look at what you've written about the impact on social grants, right? And you are adding there that, in 2017 alone, the social grants received by people under the age of 35 increased by 11% and continues to grow at that rate. So you're saying basically the burden of not taking care of young people, we're starting to feel it. In fact, before you answer that, let's show your other quotation, which is linked.
Yes.
One is the burden on the state, but also you talk about the social ills that are associated with failure to take care of this demographic, in that crime usually involves young people.
Yes, I mean, the country can't afford this kind of huge cost. This political cost and the economic cost is costing the country very far. I mean, if we look at this and extrapolate in the next 5 years, the government must pay out over 500 billion in social grants. That's a lot of money that could be used in somewhere else, in housing, in education or health.
So you've been saying then that part of the problem is that young people are not represented enough. You talked about the average age of an MP being 66, and you're also looking at organizations that used to represent the interests of the young people, but that are no longer as effective. Would that change anything?
Well, it's important. We need a group of young people to represent the voices of young people. I mean, no one addresses the issues of young people. It's always in passing when the president says that we have a youth unemployment problem. But other than that, we don't have any form of representation, whether it's in parliament or any other sectors of the economy.
Yeah, and you simply believe that what we've seen, the likes of Nompendulo Mkhatshwa being introduced by the ANC, Vuyani Pambo in the EFF and the likes, that generation, that hardly changes the picture, with the result that there's effective representation of young people?
Well, I don't take anything away from their activism, but I would be naive to say they represent an organized youth voice in Parliament.
Lastly, what is to be done then?
Well, firstly, we need to demonstrate to South African society that this crisis exists, that it's political cost and economic costs the country can't afford. We're sitting here now with gender-based violence 5 times, the global average, drug abuse 3 times the global average. The country is going down due to the fact that the system is set up in a way that it excludes young people from participating in the economy or in any form of South African society. So firstly, we still need to work on this representation issue. For example, if I can give you, if we say we have 40% of young people in the country, then it must be law that people who represent us in the National Assembly must be 40% of young people.
All right, Zama, thank you so much for coming through and sharing your insights. It would be interesting to hear your take as we go forward with processes such as the State of the Nation address, for example,
yes,
and hearing what is being proposed and things like the budget. Zama Mthunzi is a social justice activist talking to me about the plight of young South Africans.